This is the Minds Panel Show, and we have a really good show for you today, and it's something special to my heart. It's the Psychedelic Panel. And I'm your host, SatoriD, and I like to read a quote first. And you probably all heard this before, but it really resonates with what we're going to talk about today. If the doors of perceptions were cleansed, everything would appear to man as it is, infinite. William Blake. And this starts off The Doors of Perception by Aldous Huxley. And I read it, I read that book prior to even taking any psychedelics. And it really kind of opened my mind to even entertain the idea of taking psychedelics. And as you guys kind of know, I guess real quick, I wanted to say what psychedelic actually like literally means and what the roots come for, and it's a Greek word, psyche, meaning mind or soul, and dēloun, or meaning manifest. So it literally means the manifestation of the mind or the soul. So it's the soul manifesting, and I think that's a really interesting thing. And of course, soul and mind can mean very different things to everybody, but I think it's all about exploring the inner world. And I read this one other book one time, and it's called Inner Paths to Outer Space. And so this kind of the whole like fractal thing where you kind of like explore your inner worlds, and it kind of mirror images the outer world. And so this is kind of what we're going to touch on, but I think we'll start it off really simple, as I'm going to share a story of my first time taking psychedelics. And then we'll go. I was out of my first year in college, and I was like kind of scared, like I didn't know, like, oh my God, I'm going to take mushrooms. And I was excited, but I also was weary. And I read a lot of stuff. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to do it. But I didn't want to take the full eighth of mushrooms because I was scared. And I read, if you take it in tea form, it's not as potent. So I made a tea out of it, and I remember like I did it by myself in my room, and I remember drinking it, and I was like, oh, okay, no, there's no turning back. I was sitting in my bed, I was waiting for it to like hit me, and I had no idea what was going on. And I remember thinking, I don't feel anything. This like it's probably not going to hit me. And I had this cone in my like a street cone that I stole from like a construction site in my room, and it was in the corner of my eye, and it just like fell, like it went like, and then it went back up, and I'm like, oh my God, I think I'm tripping out. And then, like from there, like the whole time I was just kind of typical story where you're just like amazed by everything, like you're in wonder, and like everything's kind of like moving.
Wait a minute.
And I was,
so you were by yourself the first time?
Yeah, I did it by myself.
Is that unusual? Because it seems like most people would want someone around, or and instead of being alone.
I guess I don't know. I don't know. I felt like to take it by myself. I went up north to go visit my friend in San Francisco, and I bought shrooms up there, and I wanted to take it by myself. I don't know why. I just felt like I needed to take it by myself. And so when I got back home, when I had the house to myself, I took him, and then I remember the funniest portion of the trip is that I was looking at my mirror that I had in my room. And then I was looking at it, and everything was like moving, and then all of a sudden I had no mouth, and I was like, hey, I was thinking in my head, that's kind of weird. And I was like, but I was so involved in the visuals that I was like, I can't speak. And I was like, no, that's just an illusion in the mirror, but I can't speak. But I tried to speak, but I couldn't. And then it started it started like messing, it started freaking me out. And then, oh shit. I was like, I can't look at the mirror anymore. Like, I blocked the mirror so I wouldn't look at it. Just weird little things like that. I mean, I didn't trip that bad, but it was just funny because like I was so naive and so like everything was like anything was like shimmer. I'd be like, oh my god, that's so cool.
Yeah, everything was new to you.
Yeah, everything was new to me. So it was just interesting. So I guess Miguel, let's share a story of one of your experiences.
Okay, yeah. Thinking about it, I'll probably share one when I smoked some DMT.
Okay.
Which was pretty interesting. It wasn't the first time I ever smoked it, but I guess it was the first time I actually broke through. Like when you just jump onto the other side when you smoke too much, or when you just smoke DMT, I guess. We were in a garage of my mate's house, or my friend's house. It was, I think, 4 of us. And we had it in a bong. So we packed it and we smoked DMT. And pretty much as I was smoking it, I pretty much didn't even finish it, but I could already feel, I guess it was my soul leave the body, like my body. So I felt like I just shot straight into space, and I could see everything around me, which was pretty cool. Like as I was going into space, I could just see like as if jumping out of the plane, but actually going back into the plane, kind of thing. And then I reached space, and then I could just see all these different types of beings around me, and they started to share like some sort of information with me, but they were speaking in some sort of different language that I couldn't actually understand them. But I was just there in awe, just taking in everything I could take. And then they were showing me the world, because we were already in outer space. So then they showed me the world, and then after that I just slowly started to come back. It probably lasted like 5-10 minutes, but from going to reality and not reality anymore into something that, you know, your imagination is creating, I guess. So just your brain is just showing you, it's just intense. I think DMT was probably like one of the most intense psychedelics I've taken so far. I don't know if anyone else has taken DMT actually. But reading as well, before and after, there's a lot of people that talk about going into outer space and talking to different beings. I don't know if anyone else has read kind of the same, but I've read that a few times. So I don't know if it's kind of like the same experiences that everyone else is having, or kind of the same information we are taking in by this plant or by the psychedelic, and we're just, you know, translating it in our own way. But for a lot of people to go to outer space, it's kind of cool. It's like it's someone trying to tap into us and trying to tell us something. I don't know. It just opened up a lot of perceptions that I did have, and it's been crazy.
Yeah, that book I mentioned in the beginning, it's called
In Paths to Outer Space.
Yeah, and it's exactly.
Yeah, I've got it, but I've never read it. I think it's by Rick
Strassman. Yeah, it's actually like a compilation, but Rick Strassman, for people that don't know, he wrote the DMT, the Spirit Molecule. But and so he has different artists, like science fiction artists, that talk about it, and just different, like trying to get the whole picture of like what's really going on behind, you know, this shared experience. Terrence McKenna kind of talks about it a lot, and like kind of true hallucinations, to where DMT and ayahuasca are a little bit different than the other ones, as far as you have this real sense that you're in this other world, and it's pretty universal, and it's not necessarily like with mushrooms or LSD. It's kind of about yourself, and you trying to get over yourself, or it's everything's kind of like coded with your own psyche. But yeah, that's pretty interesting. Gus Spiders, you want to jump in here and share a story?
Yeah, I was just gonna tune in and say, you know, that whole thing about they tell you not to think bad thoughts. And your bad thoughts like what? And they say, you know, not to pretend your head's an orange and try to peel it, and kind of things like that, where you can manipulate what someone else is going to expect, you know, by what they hear prior. And I'm very cautious about that when I read through a lot of other people's trips, and I'm like, well, I want to make sure that I realize that this has to be someone else's experience, so I don't do exactly that. But once upon a time ago, it was probably one of my more vivid experiences that always comes back. It wasn't really the biggest trip I've had, or like most amount or most visuals or anything, but it was in high school, and I had tried to take shrooms multiple times, but it was either, maybe bunk and they would have an awkward effect, or didn't take enough or whatever. So a friend and I finally just wanted to just do it and take, I think we took a little more than an eighth each. And we had 2 girls with us that were gonna kind of be the babysitters if anything went wrong. And for the most part, my friend had a perfect trip. He was just watching visuals on the TV or whatever. Anytime, I was fine for the most part, laying down and stuff and just like kind of looking at the walls. But anytime I would go and look at any of the visuals on the screen, any of the stuff going on, I would start to panic mode a little bit, and I would start to get like dizzy and nauseous, and I would start to feel like the effects of kind of the visuals almost on my gravity, on my balance, if that makes sense. And so it starts to make you feel a little uneasy. And so I went into the bathroom and it was dark, and I even thought to myself, I knew that looking in the mirror is generally a bad idea. But so I went in there and it was dark in there, and I just kept staring into the mirror for a little bit. And nothing happened to me, luckily, that would kind of throw me off, but behind me started to rise these 4 figures made up of like shadow, and they rose up into full humanoid figures, and they started to like crawl out of the mirror, as if not to get the me that was in their mirror side of the world, but to come through the mirror to get the real me. And so I just remember freaking out and running into the shower and pulling the curtains behind me as they started to crawl out of the mirror. It was a pretty vivid experience, and I think that attributes to it being really dark in there and imagining a lot of that, but it was still a good atmosphere to have an experience that I don't think I would have had during that trip that wasn't that potent.
Yeah, that's interesting. So, Melissa.
Yeah.
You're up.
Yeah, good Lord. I just want to preface this by saying, a couple of different things. Like, I've had so many experiences that are absolutely amazing. I feel very blessed. I can't just pick one out because there's been so many. But one thing I just wanted to say in terms of age, I think a lot of people get into drugs in high school, and I don't necessarily know that that's a good thing, because it gets people wrapped up in it, and they're not emotionally mature enough to really have come into their own center before starting stuff like that. I guess I'm pretty lucky that I didn't even start any drugs until I was in my 30s. So I was well on my way to already feeling comfortable with myself. So any kind of hallucinogen you take, you have to have confidence in yourself, like you were saying, in terms of, like Gov Spiders was saying, in terms of having good thoughts. If you're secure in yourself to begin with, then that's not a problem necessarily. There's no sense of paranoia or no sense of like, oh, what's going to happen? Something bad's going to happen, First time I did mushrooms, I guess, like I said, I was in my 30s, and someone gave me some mushrooms. I don't know how much I took, but it was about an hour later, and nothing was going on. So we left where we were. We went back to someone else's house, and someone was passing around a joint. So for some reason, that just kicked it off. The combination of the two, for some reason. I was just sitting on a couch, and suddenly I just kind of sat back and closed my eyes and went, oh my God. That's literally just the light show went up. The light show that started in my head, I've never seen such beautiful colors and shapes, and it's like, oh. And I started up a mountain. There were 2 voices in my head, one that I attributed to higher consciousness or God or my higher self, and I was literally having a conversation with myself as I was ascending a mountain. And everything I thought in my head, there was a comeback answer to a question, well, what about this? And then this sage, wise voice said, well, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, oh, okay. I was literally teaching myself different questions about life. And I remember at one point I opened my eyes a little bit. There were 4 or 5 other people in the room, and seemed like they were all doing their own thing. Except this one guy, he was a little obnoxious. And as I sat there, I felt this thing in front of my face. And I opened my eyes, and there was a cat ass in my face. He picked up the cat in the room, pulled up the tail, and literally put the ass in front of my face. I was like, are you kidding me? I just kind of wiped it out of the way. It said, go away. He was giggling. I was like, what an asshole. And then I thought to myself, well, aren't I supposed to love everyone? Am I not supposed to love thy neighbor and love your fellow man? And how can I not feel this way when this guy is just obnoxious, and he was kind of a nasty little guy? Like, how do I come to terms with that? And the voice said to me, you don't have to like everybody. I was like, oh, okay. So you have to love people, but you don't have to like them. If you can differentiate between that, like if you were in a ditch and if I could do something for you, anybody, any human being you see in trouble, that doesn't mean you want to hang out with them and be friends with them, because maybe they're an asshole. But to love them and to have compassion in your heart, it's like if you can differentiate that in your head. And I was like, oh, that's cool. And as I was coming down the mountain later on, I had all these thoughts in my head, and I kept saying, well, God, this is so hard. And the voice said to me, of course it's hard. That's why it's important. And then I kept coming down, and as I was coming down, I kept forgetting where I was 5 minutes ago. And I had, like when you wake up from a dream and you have to kind of keep going over it in your head because you don't want to forget something. So I had to keep kind of going back up, remembering what I'd learned, and come back down with each step. And it's like, oh, this is hard. And it's like, keep going. And it's like, what is this all about? And the voice said to me, bring back the message that love is light. And it's like, all right. And that was my first trip. So it was mind-blowing. And,
wow.
And since then, every single mushroom trip I've taken, it's like you go to school and it's like you open your book and it's like, okay, teacher, what's the subject of today? Because the mushrooms, every time I went on a trip, gave me a different message. After a while, they stopped giving me messages, and I got the impression that it was like, okay, I'm done with you for right now. And so I haven't done them in a while, because it's like the messages stop coming through, kind of like, you've been through school. There's nothing more we can teach you.